The moment fled back into the past where it belonged. Guilliman's body slammed into wet soil. He was dying again. His soul clung on, but that too was being eaten alive by Mortarian's plague. Footsteps halted by his head. There was a poke on the breastplate of the armor of fate. Guilliman heard Mortarian speak, but he could not see, and he could sense nothing else but pain.
"Do you see, Guilliman? You follow the wrong master," said Mortarian. "He is a cyst, a pus-filled canker surrounding a dead thing lodged in the fabric of reality like a thorn or a piece of shrapnel. It must be drawn out for things to heal. Do you understand now that this is what you follow?"
Mortarian grunted in amusement.
"Of course you can't answer. I doubt you understand anyway."
There was the sound of Mortarian shifting his stance. A wistful tone entered his voice.
"We'll soon be in the Garden of Nurgle, my brother. The veils are parting. I can see it already. Once you are dead, this world will fall within it and become a jewel of decay. You have damaged my network, not by enough, and at the coming of your death, one by each one of your worlds will pass from this place of cold void and uncaring stars into the Grandfather's embrace. I wish you could see it. It is beautiful, full of life and potential. There are trees here and plants of amazing variety. It is not barren. It is not like that cold light you showed me. Not like him. It's not like the Materium at all, with its pointless struggle against inevitability. Here nothing ever truly ends, but is reborn and dies and is reborn and dies over and over again. Everything here is given many gifts. Nothing, no matter how small, is overlooked, and all share in Grandfather's bounties. There is no pain, and because there is no pain, suffering is borne gladly. Now tell me, brother, compared to the hell our father has inflicted upon the galaxy, does that sound so terrible?"
He took a deep breath, a man sampling country air on a fine day.
"I wish you could see it,"
he said again. The pain still raged through Guilliman, but it was diminishing.
"If only you would turn. You are nearly dead. Soon the pain will be over."
Mortarian knelt beside his brother and rested his hand on his chest.
"Don't you want that? For it to be done?"
He began to stroke like he was soothing a feverish child.
"Hush now, Robute. Hush. Go to the Grandfather and you will see. He will make it all right. He will take the pain away forever."
He sensed the cauldron's passing as a tolling, as of a bell's ring, felt but not heard. The garden shook with an earthquake. The strange demon creatures that dwelled there set up a cacophony of cries and moans. On the areas of Ajax that it overlaid, reality trembled and reasserted itself, and the garden began to fade.
"Impossible,"
Mortarian whispered. The corpse of his brother twitched. The armor of fate was a corroded shell, but somehow its power pack restarted, and light blinked on systems all over it. Guilliman's blackened face turned up to look at him. Mortarian felt something huge and dangerous moving through the warp, something he had not felt for a long time. Guilliman's back arched. The armor was humming now, giving off a psychic signature as arcane mechanisms within it powered on throughout. The earth shook again. A second toll of the unseen bells sent the denizens of the garden into panic. Trees crackled as they dragged up roots and attempted to lumber away. A million kinds of demon-fly buzzed up from the corpse grounds and flew off in gathering storms. Nurgling shrieked and waddled as fast as their little legs would carry them. Mortarion stood hurriedly, raised silence and made to bring it down, to destroy Guilliman finally, take his soul as a sacrifice to the great god Nurgle, even if he could not take his worlds. But he would not move. Guilliman's eyes were glowing with pure white power. The last slimes of his decayed flesh burned away, and a network of feathery capillaries spread in their place, bearing new blood unsullied by the godblight. The metal of the armor of fate shimmered, impossibly remaking itself. Bright decorations appeared as tarnish crackled and fell away. Wires grew and reconnected as surely as Guilliman's skin was growing back. The nevergrounds of the garden shook hard. Demons large and small were screaming, emerging from their hiding places and fleeing in riotous stampede. Away in the distance, ever visible, wherever you went in the garden, Nurgle's black manse shivered, and Mortarion felt another presence, as powerful as the first, looking at him from behind its ever-shuttered windows. The ground cracked and broke. Glaring whiteness blazed from the crevasses. Guilliman's corpse rose up and hung in the air, supported by a pillar of radiance, and slowly turned so he was upright. He reached out, and the Emperor's sword appeared in his hand, and burned with the fires of 1,000 suns. "He speaks to me, brother," said Robute Guilliman. "Does he not speak to you?" The unbearable radiance enfolded Guilliman, so glaring Mortarion threw up his hands. "Father," Mortarion said, and his voice quailed like a little boy discovered in the course of some small but unforgivable crime. "I am his right hand, brother," said Guilliman. "I am his general, his champion. I am the avenging sun. By his might am I preserved." The landscape flickered between the blasted battlefield of Ajax and the garden of Nurgle. The ground of the garden was rolling.
"This is impossible. You should be dead."
There was a creak of a door, faint but portentous, coming from the manse. The doors never opened to Nurgle's house. Mortarion turned very, very slowly and looked to the great house. A single tiny shutter on an insignificant gable was open, a square of deeper blackness in the black wood.
"Forgive me, grandfather,"
he quailed. Guilliman looked past him, and something looked through him, seeing all worlds at once. Eyes as bright as the centers of galaxies stared back at the black, forbidding house. "You are a traitor," Guilliman said, in a voice that was not quite his own. "You have brought low all that could have been, but you are as much of a victim as a monster, Mortarion. Perhaps one day you might be saved. Until then, you must go back to the master you chose." "No!" Mortarion cried, but it was too late. Some force reached for him and yanked hard. He flew back over and over through the garden, towards the black house of the plague god. He felt a moment of perfect terror before he flew in through the open portal, and it slammed shut behind him, trapping him with an altogether more awful god. Nurgle was displeased. Guilliman looked over the garden of Nurgle. He was between two worlds. The warp was a shifting thing, never constant. The garden was a collection of ideas. It had no true form, and through it he could see a million other worlds that underpinned it. The dreams of souls living and dead, and past that, as if glimpsed through the banks of glittering sea mist that evaporated before the morning sun. The battlefield of Ajax. "Hear me!" Guilliman's voice boomed through eternities. The sword blazed higher, until the fire of it threatened to burn out time. "I am Robute Guilliman, last loyal son of the Emperor of Terra. It is not your destiny to end today, God of Plague.
But know that I am coming for you, and I will find you, and you will burn.
He gripped the sword of the Emperor two-handed and raised it high. Rising waves of fire ripped into the garden. From the great manse a cry of rage sounded, as a wall of flame hotter than a million suns devoured everything in its path, finally breaking and receding within yards of the black walls of Nurgle's house. Its infinite hall shook. Mossy tiles fell from the roof. Sodden timbers steamed. "This is a warning. The warp and the materium were once in balance. For too long you have tipped the scales. Understand that it is not only the warp that is capable of pushing back. This realm is not real. Only will is real, and none may outmatch my will. Be assured, Lord of Plagues, and convey this message to your brothers, that I do not speak for myself. I speak for the Emperor of Mankind." Then he was falling forever, until his knee hit the ground and he woke into reality once more. Guilliman opened his eyes. He was kneeling on the ground of Ajax. The sword of the Emperor was buried point down in the cracked earth. Its fires had turned everything around him into glass. Burnt-out suits of armor lay around him. Only he was untouched. Mortarion was nowhere to be seen. He stood. Whatever presence had inhabited him was gone. The air was clean. There was no sign of taint nearby, and he knew that the Emperor's sword had burned the godblight away. Natas's psychic shield still limned the dueling ground, but through it he could see clearing skies and clouds heat-shocked by lance fire. A ferocious orbital bombardment was laying waste to Mortarion's army, which retreated, leaderless and outmatched under the cover of poisoned fogs. The air crackled. All around him golden giants appeared. Further out, other spikes of energy announced the arrival of more custodians into the rear of the Death Guard's lines. There would be a great slaughter of the traitors before the day was done. Maldavar Colquhoun stepped forward. "It is done, then." "It is done. Mortarion is gone. His network is broken," Roboto Guilliman said. "The plague wars are over," and he sheathed the sword of the Emperor. Teleportation was an instantaneous means of travel, but there was an infinite gap between moments where one could feel the warp. Sometimes it lasted an eternity, but it was always forgotten.